So, in this next section, there's a meditation on the generations and on the flow and the transmission of the karma resulting from deeds across the generations, as well as treasures and heirlooms that are handed on from fathers to sons and grandsons and so forth, and right of succession and all of that. So this next section is a kind of a meditation on the flows that result from Beowulf's deed. Note that both Hrothgar and Hugelac are kings who are old, worn out, sort of grizzled kings who have failed in various ways. Both have risen to power by slaying other kings. Hugelac rose to power by his two warriors, the two brothers Eofor and Wulf, killing the Swedish king Ongentheow, which brought him to the throne. And Hrothgar rose to power as the result of killing King Froda of the Heathobards, and he will have to deal with the karma that results from that when Froda's son Ingeld, who is now of age, it's been 12 years, and who is betrothed to his daughter Friawaru, soon will go to war and will result in the burning down of Heorot. And so he will have to deal with the consequences of that action, just as the court of the Yeats will have to deal with the consequences of the slaying of Ongentheow when Onela comes looking for his nephews to kill them who have fled to the court of the Yeats. So all of this kind of karmic activity and the consequences of passing things along through the generations are meditated on in this next section. So it says, after this, the son of Ecglaf, notice that Unferth is referred to as the son of Ecglaf. Ecglaf boasted less about his prowess in battle now, when all the warriors, through Beowulf's might, had been enabled to examine the hand, the fiend's fingers, nailed up on the gables. Seen from in front, each nail, each claw of that warlike heathen monster looked like steel, a terrifying spike. Everyone said that no weapon whatsoever, no proven sword could possibly harm it, could damage that battle-hardened, blood-stained hand. And so they're looking up at the size, the sheer size of Grendel's arm as it's swinging from the ceiling, from the rafters. Grendel is a giant. There's always this sense in these texts that the men of a previous age were giants. You get this in Homer, where the Greeks regard the Mycenaeans who built the various palaces of Pylos and Mycenae, especially the Lion's Gate at Mycenae. Those men could only have been giants, because only giants could have moved those blocks of stone around the way that they did. And so the Greeks were constantly, they regarded themselves as of diminished stature, since the heroes of Homer's epic, their days, who were giants, and they were constantly digging up bones of dead woolly mammoths and dead dwarf elephants that were huge, and that they would ascribe to that must obviously be the bones of the Mycenaeans. So there's always this sense that the men of previous generations are giants. And there's even a reference in the Liber Monstrorum, a book about monsters, of the finding of the bones of King Hugelac, who goes on an ill-fated expedition against the Franks down the Rhine and is slain, and Beowulf narrowly escapes that with his life to swim back to the southern tip of Sweden, where the Geats are from. And it's said there in that text that the bones of Hugelac were gigantic, and they were found in a shrine on an island in the Rhine, and he was obviously a giant from that day. So there's always this sense of, in the present framework, in these epics, of diminishment over time, that men were mightier in those days. They were more capable of great deeds than we men are today. Then orders were quickly given for the inside of Heorot to be decorated. Many servants, both men and women, bustled about that wine hall, adorned that building of retainers. Tapestries worked in gold glittered on the walls. Many a fine sight for those who have eyes to see such things. That beautiful building, braced within by iron bands, was badly damaged. The door's hinges were wrenched. When the monster, damned by all his crimes, turned in flight, despairing of his life, only the hall roof remained untouched. Death is not easy to escape, let him who will attempt it. Man must go to the grave that awaits him. Fate has adorned this for all who have souls, children of men, earth's inhabitants, and his body, rigid on its clay bed, will sleep there after the banquet. And so now comes this sort of, Hrothgar has already symbolically adopted Beowulf as his son. He's a sort of symbolic son. His own sons, Hrethric and Hrothmund, are just children at this point. They're too young. And he's about to give him some heirlooms that he has inherited from Halfdane, his father, that went to his older brother, Hergar. Hergar is no more. He's dead. He's been slain, and possibly by the Heathobards. Hereward has survived, his son, but he's probably also too young at this point. And so he's got the heirlooms that are symbolic of the office of kingship. And he's going to give them to Beowulf. But Hrothulf, who is the son of Hrothgar's brother Halya, who's also gone, but the son Hrothulf is of age, and Hrothulf is keeping very close to Hrothgar, very close to the throne, almost as a co-regent, and he's probably looking on with jealousy and envy at the symbolic adoption of Beowulf and the passing along of these heirlooms that are symbolic of the kingship to Beowulf rather than to him. Because later on, recall that Hrothulf, after Hrothgar is killed, will murder his children, Hrethric and Hrothmund, and take over the throne, and will in turn be murdered by Hereward, Hrothgar's brother's son. Then it was time for Halfdane's son to proceed to the hall. The king himself was eager to attend the feast. I have never heard of a greater band of kinsmen gathered with such dignity around their ring-giver. Then the glorious warriors sat on the benches, rejoicing in the feast. Courteously, their kinsmen Hrothgar and Hrothulf, they're mentioned together as a pair, quaffed many a mead cup, confident warriors in the high hall. Heorot was packed with feasters who were friends. The time was not yet come when the Scyldings practiced wrongful deeds, when Hrothulf will try to usurp the throne by killing Hrothgar's children. Then Hrothgar gave Beowulf Halfdane's sword and a battle banner woven with gold and a helmet and a corselet as rewards for victory. And so these are the heirlooms that he is passing along to Beowulf. Note also now the flow of treasure now. What has happened, the situation that Beowulf has come into here has been a wasteland, symbolically for 12 years, one complete cycle of Jupiter around the sun. There's been a wasteland for 12 years in which the sovereign classes, and in this case we're just talking about the Danes, Hrothgar, have failed to fix a wasteland situation where a monster has come to tyrannize and dominate over them. And so it's as though all the flows have been stultified. And the flows in Beowulf are defined, in this case, in the myth of the Rig Veda, when Indra comes in to slay the dragon Vritra. He kills Vritra, and there's a drought in the land that releases all the waters inside of Vritra's belly that pour out like rivers, bringing green to the wasteland. Same thing with Beowulf. There's a drought symbolically in the sense that the things that normally flow, since the definition of a good king is one who constantly is giving rewards to his loyal vassals and thanes in the form of treasures and heirlooms and so forth. That's what a king does, but that's what has stopped happening here until Beowulf has come in to slay the monster and release the flows, in this case the flows of treasure, which in a pre-capitalist society is based on things and objects. And of course later, when a fully, thoroughly Christian overlay has come in, the flows will no longer be covetous treasure hoards, but the relics of the saints that people will strive to go and get, and go on crusades and pilgrimages to see and get and obtain. Then Hrothgar gave him these things as rewards for victory. Many men watched while the priceless, renowned sword was presented to the hero. Beowulf emptied the ale cup in the hall. He had no cause to be ashamed at those precious gifts. There are few men, as far as I have heard, who have given 4 such treasures, gleaming with gold, to another on the mead bench with equal generosity. A jutting ridge, wound about with metal wires, ran over the helmet's crown, protecting the skull, so that well-ground swords proven in battle could not injure the well-shielded warrior when he advanced against his foes. Then the guardian of Thanes ordered that 8 horses with gold-plated bridles be led into the courtyard. Onto one was strapped a saddle, inlaid with jewels, skillfully made. That was the war seat of the great King Halfdane's son whenever he wanted to join in the swordplay. That famous man never lacked bravery at the front in battle, when men about him were cut down like corn. Then the king of the Danes, Ing's descendants, and the Danes are regarded as the descendants of Ing, and Ing is actually the god Freyr. Tacitus refers to these early Danes as the Ingvaones. They're the people of the god Ing, which is the cult of Freyr, who is responsible for fecundity. And so it's interesting that what is substituting here for the fecundity of the soil are the treasure hoards that are now flowing, as Beowulf will later, when he kills the dragon, get that treasure hoard to flow, although only briefly. Then the king of the Danes, Ing's descendants, presented the horses and weapons to Beowulf, bade him use them well and enjoy them. Thus the renowned prince, the retainer's gold warden, rewarded those fierce sallies in full measure with horses and treasure, so that no man would ever find reason to reproach him fairly. Furthermore, the guardian of warriors gave a treasure, an heirloom at the mead bench, to each of those men who had crossed the sea with Beowulf, and he ordered that gold be paid for that warrior Grendel slew so wickedly, as he would have slain many another, had not foreseen God and the warrior's courage together forestalled him. The Creator ruled over all humankind, even as he does today. Wherefore a wise man will value forethought and understanding. Whoever lives long on earth, endures the unrest of these times, will be involved in much good and much evil. Um, and so that brings us to a good stopping point where we're considering the flows and the karma of deeds across generation, as well as the flows of treasure hoards that good kings are supposed to normally get flowing. And it is kind of a slight on Hrothgar, I think, that for 12 years the treasure hoards have been locked up and the flows have stopped, since there is no one who was successful. None of his warriors were successful enough against Grendel to reward them with anything. And so in a certain sense, Grendel has been like a dragon hoarding the treasure that is now released and can now flow. Just as also Siegfried in the Siegfried myth, when he kills the dragon Fafnir, obtains the treasure hoard, and that gets to flow, but it's a cursed flow, and it becomes an accursed share, to use George Bataille's term, an accursed share that Siegfried drags with him that attracts only bad luck and bad karma as he goes from situation to situation, where one person after the next is covetous for that flow and wants to extract something from that flow, if not the whole thing, and which always leads to death and destruction and chaos. So I think that the Beowulf poet, as a Christian, is probably casting a cold eye here on these flows and regarding them as probably only bringing about mischief and bad things, just the way the Gold Hoard does in the Siegfried myth.